Good morning. Welcome back to Straightforward Therapeutics. Today I'm excited because we're starting a new series and we're going to camp out in this series for a little while. I want to talk to you for several sessions about what I consider to be the most important thing there is on the planet, bar none, and that is the subject of relationships. Relationship to me is the most important thing there is. I'm going to tell you why. If I don't play the lottery, but if I was coming home today and I found out that I had won the lottery, the mega billions, whatever it might be, just the money out the kazoo, and then I got home only to find out that my family had been killed in a car wreck, or something tragic had taken place that has taken them out of my life, there's no amount of money that would make me feel any better. But if I came home today and found out that my house was burned completely to the ground and I was standing there in my front yard holding the hands of my wife and my children and my grandchildren and they were all safe, you know what? All of that is just stuff. It can be replaced. If it's not replaced, no big deal. But there's one thing that absolutely cannot be replaced, and that is the people that I love so dearly. I was thinking in the Bible, God made Adam, and I'm assuming that Adam had some sort of communion with the animals. He named them all, the Word of God says. I don't know if he was able to talk to them or not, but I feel like that he had some kind of connection with them, obviously. But it wasn't long before God said, it's not good for man to be alone. And so he made Eve. He gave him a wife. And he said, these two shall become one. And there was a level of intimacy and connection that took place between Adam and Eve that transcended anything physical. It was a joining together of the hearts. I do a lot of counseling. I counsel a lot of people who have made some really bad choices in their life. I've done marriage counseling, I've done substance abuse counseling, I've done mental health counseling, anger management, all that stuff. But I have done a lot of sex offender therapy. And a lot of those people have made some horrible choices. And many, many times the reason for those choices were not deviant attractions, but a desire to have some level of intimacy and connection, and they went about it totally wrong. And so there's a desire inside of each and every one of us to be intimately connected with somebody else. When I say intimacy, I'm not talking about sex. I'm talking about having that deep level of communication and connection where you know that somebody cares for you deeply and you care for them deeply, and there is a level of togetherness and at homeness that comes with that makes us feel like we belong. And I think when we think about relationships, one of the things that comes to my mind is the fact that relationship in recent decades has really took a hit due to the intervention or the introduction of social media and Facebook and all of that sort of thing. It kind of amuses me to a certain extent when they started Facebook and the people that you connected with, you called them friends. I'm going to friend you. And, it really kind of took away from the true meaning of what a friend is, even though you may have someone on Facebook you're connected with that you're very closely associated with that you can genuinely call your friend. But so many times the people that we connect with on social media, we don't really know them and they don't really know us because we haven't actually spent any time with them. And so we don't know really what goes on in their head. We see what they post on a social media site, and we do the same thing. If you have it, I don't have Facebook, but if I'm on a social media, when I was on Facebook, and I would post something, oftentimes I was looking to see if I was going to be accepted if somebody was going to like what I posted? Am I going to be affirmed? You know, I'm looking for some kind of emotional need to be met by some people that I have never even met in my life and don't know nothing about. And so something is kind of wrong with that, in my opinion. Relationship to me is the most important thing there is, as I said a while ago. And you know, I remember one time I was listening to some teaching by Stephen Covey, and we're going to look at some of that in a couple of future videos about resolving conflict. But I had back in the day when there was cassette players, I had a job where I ran mail, bulk mail, back and forth to several different towns in my area. And so I had a lot of windshield time. I was listening to Stephen Covey teach on the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And one of the things that he was talking about was put first things first, which was really get your priorities straight. And, you know, and he gave an illustration or a kind of a little exercise where he said, picture yourself walking into a church, and there's obviously a funeral that's fixing to take place, and there's a casket up front. And yes, of course, you're the one that's in the casket, so it's your funeral. And you're sitting a little ways back in the church, and he said, and people are going to speak about you. And he said, you know, what is it that you would want these people to say? And he said, I'm going to give you some examples. He said, your wife is going to speak, your best friend is going to speak, and someone who works with you, a colleague or a coworker, is going to speak, and one of your children are going to speak. And so he said, now turn off the cassette player and try to picture what you would like for these people to say about you. And so I did pretty good at first. I turned off the cassette player, and the first person I thought about was my boss, who at that time I was working the Teen Challenge in Neosho, Missouri, and I had a not only a friend, but he was also my boss. But I wanted him to be able to say that, you know, Gary is all in, that he gives his 100%, that he does what he does as unto the Lord, and that he is a dependable worker, co-worker. And I thought, well, I live up to that pretty good, you know. And then I thought about my best friend, you know, and one of my friends was a fellow by the name of Ron, who lived over in Bonne Terre. And I thought, you know, I would want Ron to say that Gary was the kind of friend that if I called him at 3 o'clock in the morning and asked him to come to be where I'm at, that he would actually show up and be there. And you know what? I knew that I would do that. I would do that for him. Absolutely. I thought about my wife. We've been married 38 years now. And at that time, we'd probably been married maybe 28 years, 29 years, whatever. And I thought, you know, my wife, I would want her to say that I was the type of husband that always endeavored to provide for her, and that that I was faithful, and that I could be depended on, and that she didn't have to worry about trusting me. And so, hang on just a second, there's a lawnmower nearby. And I thought, yeah, I think I live up to that. Absolutely do. There's a fly right there. Anyway, the last one was one of my children. I have 2 girls, and I thought, what would I want my kids to say? And I thought I would want my kids to say that they were always number one in my life, that I didn't put anything or anyone before them, that I always had time for them. And, you know, that's when things got a little teary, because I pastored a church for a number of years. And as a pastor, you know, the last thing you want is to appear as though that you're showing your children preference over somebody else's kids. But you know what? I should have showed my kids some preference, because they're my kids. And I thought about when my little girl, my youngest daughter, we had a tire swing in the backyard, and I thought about the times when she would walk into the living room and she would say, Dad, will you come swing me on this tire swing? And I'd be sitting in my lazy boy recliner, and I would say something like, oh no, I got to go mow the yard, you know, as if that yard is going to grow a lot in the 10 or 15 minutes it took to swing her on that tire swing. These are things that you think about later, and you realize that relationship is so important. I think about the impact that I had on my daughters growing up, not really knowing how to parent well, and the things that I put them through, trying to make them live up to the example that I wanted them to be, so that they were a good reflection on my wife and I, and so many things that you realize that you did wrong that had affected your relationship to some extent. Now, I'm blessed that I've got two wonderful daughters who love me, and they have forgiven my shortcomings, and we have a wonderful relationship. But I'm just saying that, you know, relationship is something that's in the making. It's something you do every single day. The friends that you have, your family members, my grandkids, my wife, we've been married 38 years, but you know what? I'm still working on that relationship. Every day, my actions and my words, they say something to somebody. And whether it's somebody that I'm counseling, or whether it's, somebody at my church or whatever, I need to be aware of the fact that my actions and my words are going to have an impact and an influence in this person's life, and they're going to see me in some sort of way as a result of how I treat them. And so I am excited today about this series on relationship. I want to encourage you to get your journals out. And I want you to begin to use those journals that we talked about there for a while. And one of the things I want you to do is to get your journal out and go back and try to identify all of the major relationships that you've had in your life that stand out to you. I want you to identify whether those relationships were good or bad. Did they end well? Are they still going today? Try to identify some of the common denominators that went along with those relationships that maybe reoccurred. Maybe you may see some behaviors or some things that you did or felt or said that really influenced those relationships in some way in every case. What were the messages that were sent to you as a child that has influenced your relationships? Those are some prompters. You may want to back this video up and write those down and kind of work on those. But we are going to do some serious work in the area of relationship in the next 6 to 8 videos. And so if you know somebody that can benefit from this, please get them on board, and let's work together. If you click on the more area there on Straightforward Therapeutics, you'll see my email. It's brtfutr@gmail.com, like Bright Future. And I would love to get your comments. Please subscribe. Please like or share. I put these out. I'm not professional by no means. I am a professional person, but I'm not a professional YouTuber. But I put these out because I want to leave some breadcrumbs behind, and I want to try to help somebody. And so I hope that you're getting something from this. I'm excited about where we're going to go with this. We're going to be really honest, and there's going to be some real talk, and there could be some real tears that are involved. And so you travel with me, will you? And so I will see you next time. Remember, progress, not perfection. That's what we're shooting for. But if you will keep coming back, we're going to make progress. God bless you.